Welcome to PCN, and today is our last episode of 2018, and we're devoting the entire episode to PCN. And we have as our guest Kim Miot, who was the founder and the person who established PCN back in 2012. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Julie. It's great to be back on set.
It's great to have you back on set. You're usually behind the camera or in the control room or somewhere else. So you're going to take back PCN for the 2019. You took a little liaison and did some other things for the organization. So let's talk about what life was like on PCN in the very beginning and how you established a news show to begin with.
Well, it was quite an undertaking at the beginning. I had never done a news show before. I had done a lot of production, but not putting together a community news show. So when I kind of came in, we spent the first few months figuring out what to do for a set, figuring out who's going to be anchor, which ended up being me, which I didn't realize, but which is fine. It worked out well. And we had Larry King, who was also a co-anchor. He used to be on our board of directors. So that was fun. We used to use a green screen, so we didn't have this set. This came a few years later, or a year or two, I don't remember. But we used to stand in front of the green screen, and then we would do stand-up lead-ins to our stories. So that was a completely different energy than sitting at the table.
Sure. Let me ask you, to actually create a news show, it's not really hard-hitting news. And a lot of people think of when you have a news show that, oh, you must cover the fire that happened down the street and the accidents. And you don't. This has all been right from the beginning. It's been good news. So how did you determine what you were going to cover?
That's a great question, because we definitely aren't the broadcast news, and we didn't want to be, because there's plenty of that. So we wanted to be community news, something that kind of reflected the towns that we live in, the 4 towns that we represent, and of course the South Shore in general. So we wanted to do the people, the events, the organizations, businesses, just what's going on down here, and there's so much to tell. I'm just so proud of all the stories over the years and different things that we've covered. It's been just some really impactful things, and I love it because it's stories that likely would never be told
otherwise
anywhere else. And it's also can act as sort of an archive for a community, because again, sometimes when a broadcast station was down covering something that we were covering, which happened occasionally, I would see it later, and it would be like 30 seconds, maybe, with a couple shots where I could go into it for 2, 4, 5, 6 minutes, whatever I felt like the story warranted. And that's really important, because broadcast stations can't do that. But community access can do that, and I love that.
Yeah, there's no length that we have to follow, which is wonderful. Now, your staffing has changed dramatically on who you use to actually shoot your packages and who you use as your anchors, and how that has evolved. So talk a little bit about the different staff you've had over the years.
That's been also something fun to watch, because even as myself, looking back at my first few anchorings and how I grew over time, it's definitely a skill set that I've seen people grow. And when you started, of course, you were always quite good. You've even grown. And then we had you know, Brian Sullivan was on, and some new people now too. We're getting some new staff in here now. It's been fun to see. Maureen Boyle, who used to be Maureen Bates, grew tremendously from her first time. So it's been really a great training ground for people who, even if you don't want to be a news anchor or you don't want to be anything, it's that on-camera experience. And it grows over time, so I love seeing people grow.
And the packages that people produce for us in the field are often not just a camera shooting an event, but we tell a story, and we get different angles of the events, and we highlight interviews, and then we have what we call B-roll. And a lot of people don't know what B-roll is. Can you explain what is B-roll?
Sure. If you think of the interview as A-roll, everything else is B-roll. And for me, I always like as much B-roll as possible. So it's the anything other than the interview that supports that story or that interview.
So the surroundings, the event.
The atmosphere, close-ups, wider shots, how many people are there. If it's about art, you're seeing the close-ups of the art. So it's really fun to put a story together and tell a story. I love storytelling, and to tell it through video is a really fun experience when you're editing and all of a sudden it's coming alive in a really powerful way. That's been meaningful.
What I noticed that I knew nothing about when I first came to PACTV was how important editing actually is, and what a craft and what a skill set editing is. That you can take pieces of B-roll and A-roll and assets that might be pictures or other things that you have, and find a way to weave them in a cohesive manner that makes the story flow, makes it meaningful, so that when people are done watching either a 2 or 3 minute, they know exactly what the objective was, what they saw, and they remember it. I don't think people understand, because right now you can take your phone and you can film something and you can record something, but actual storytelling, there's a craft to it that I know the employees here are constantly upgrading our ability to tell a better story. Okay, segments.
Yes.
You decided on having certain segments that you repeat every few weeks or every few months. Talk to me about how you came to those and what they were.
Well, so we represent 4 towns. So each show we would attempt doesn't always happen to represent all the 4 towns with a story. Plymouth obviously is a very large town, and so there's often a few more Plymouth stories. But then we also would need something else that was a kind of like a continuation as opposed to the one-off stories. So we started doing different segments, and those evolved as well, and they've been really fun. We had I picked probably one of my favorite is Local Eats.
Yes.
So we still do this this one, and we go into restaurants and we kind of like, instead of, it's sort of like the Phantom Gourmet, but a little different, because we kind of can tell a little bit more about who the person is, who the owner is, or who the chef is, their philosophy on food,
how they came to be where they are.
Yeah, their
all of them
backstory.
have really interesting stories too.
Yeah, it can be really neat. Or it's a family-owned thing. You can see the different generations. So we tell it through the food. And that's been a fun segment. We've had a health and wellness segment with we've gone around to different gyms, and they've just given like tips on something, stress, how to deal with stress, or how to stretch better, or things like that. We've had doctor's orders where we partnered with Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital and with the different doctors, and he would talk about, you know, whatever.
All kinds of things.
Whatever kind of, that month or something.
From cancer to how to take care of your body to how often you should be screened for things, all kinds of important, that's relevant to lots of people.
Yeah, and then one, you know, also dear to my heart is the pet ones, because we did pet adoption and pet health. So we would go around to different veterinarians, and often was one of my pets were in it.
Yeah,
you can see a lot of my cats are in quite a few videos, because we needed someone to work on. So that was fun. So actually, I have a little highlight video if you want to play that highlight video.
A look.
The Zika virus is a virus, and it is carried by mosquitoes.
Individuals who are found to have an early stage cancer are often eligible to have it removed with some of the newer techniques.
Our goal is to have that artery open within a minimum of 90 minutes.
This is Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Years ago, a young family loved spending their summers in Duxbury, a beautiful seaside community. Friends and family, beach parties and barbecues. But they realized there was one thing missing: an ice cream shop. So they opened the now legendary Farfar's Danish Ice Cream.
The reasons I come to the gym is, number one, of course, is to stay in shape, but it also makes me a better person for everybody else.
We are here at the Kingsbury Club in Kingston with our PCN Health and Wellness segment. We're here today to talk about strength training.
don't have to be on vacation to add a little sophistication to your bedroom. Be creative, gather things from around the house, keep it simple, and you can still have a stunning holiday tablescape. Thanks for watching PCN's Design Corner.
So when buyers look for a home, what they do is they have a checklist in mind of what they'd like. However, they don't buy on a checklist, they buy on emotion.
All you do is take the cat's foot and then just gently press on the upper surface, and you'll see the claw emerge from its sheath. It has everything to do with your dog's breed and her level of activity and her metabolism.
Unlike a person, a dog's ear is very long. Their canal is about 6 times the length, and it's just a long tube of skin.
Even at a temperature of 68 to 70 degrees outside, on a sunny day, the car can heat up within a half an hour to well over 90 degrees.
Hi, this is Harry Potter. Harry Potter is one of the many cats that we have available here for adoption.
This week we would love to spotlight 2 special boys. We are hoping to keep these boys together. They're siblings.
They're all healthy, spayed and neutered, and up to date on all their shots.
So there's a new state commission coming out that will actually address the private-public partnership between the town of Plymouth and the Commonwealth with the 400th commemoration that's coming up in 2020.
Well, this is budget week for the 2017 fiscal year. We have a $39 billion budget, and during the week, and it's a long week, we start very early, we finish very late.
The reality is it's not a legislative decision, it is a decision by the voters of the Commonwealth.
As a legislator, my job is to try to advocate for our communities, trying to get resources down to our district, and one of the things I worked on this past session with my colleagues is getting funding for cleaning up our ponds here in Pembroke and throughout the South Shore.
That was great. Brings back a lot of memories. So aside from segments, we also have recurring guests on the show, which I get to interview a lot of them, and I find it fascinating. So let's talk about some of the different ones that we have, like starting with Town Talk with our town managers.
Yes, that's been a really great segment too. We try to rotate them as much as we can and get them on, and it's, you know, grown from like 5 to 8 minutes kind of thing, where they just give a little update on what's happening, and I found that's real effective, just good quick little segments to update people.
Right, and it's nice to see their faces in an environment like this, where they're not in a meeting, they're not, you know, they can just talk about what they want to talk about, which is wonderful. We also do mindful moments with Leslie Cutler, who we're very lucky to have.
Oh, we're very lucky. I love having Leslie on. She's been a great addition to the show, and she kind of gives she's a counselor, so she gives sort of just great tips on stress, or how to deal with your relatives at the holidays and things like that. So that's been another great segment.
Right, and she does current trends also in mental health and awareness, which is wonderful. Real estate. And now real estate is so important, especially in our area of the country and in our district especially. So we have to have Mike Gamaris, who's the owner of Remax Spectrum, who gives a perspective on real estate. Talk about that.
I think that's been real interesting to me. Every time I listen to it, I'm like, I learned something new, and because it's always changing, you know, and then how one thing affects another thing. I think that's been neat to have him on as well. So that's always been an impactful segment every time. And then we also have Treasury Notes.
With Tom O'Brien.
With Tom O'Brien. And that's been another one with the financial side of kind of this area. And he represents like the whole county, Plymouth County. So that's been a different take, and that broadens it a little bit, as does the real estate one, because it's about the area, it's about the current trend in the area, for the South, not just South Shore, but Massachusetts.
And Tom O'Brien brings up a lot of information that people don't understand, like the benefits that the state employees get and county employees get, and how it all works.
And how the money works.
How the money works.
And I had no idea. It's
what
fascinating.
does county government do versus your regular town government, which is interesting.
And how to get some of those benefits. Because you maybe didn't realize that your organization or your town department or something, you can actually benefit in some way.
Absolutely. Another thing which is really prevalent around here is healthy appetites, which we happen to have Jeff Hills.
Yes.
And that's explain how you came up with that, having him on.
Well, he's just, if you've ever been into Healthy Appetites, he is a wealth of information.
Yes.
I mean, he just walks in and talks, and it can fill the segment. He's just so much information on health in all kinds of ways. You could bring up any topic, and he can give you information about it. So that's just been a really beneficial one as well.
And like you said, one topic always leads to another. Like we were talking about the oils that you get from the hemp plant, which then leads to discussions about marijuana and medical marijuana. And when we have like Mike on the real estate segment, then we end up talking about affordable housing and workforce housing. So it really proves how so much of this is all interconnected.
Yes.
Okay, so aside from those other wonderful segments we've had, we have done some really great adventures, or you've had some really great adventures, and our videographers have.
Yes.
So talk about the great adventures that you've gone on while covering stories.
Well, for me, some of my ones that I've really enjoyed, where I've gone up an airplane over Plymouth. From Plymouth Airport.
And why did you go up?
Engine. Well, I was doing a story. It was a series that I had called Culture and Lifestyle for a while, and it was what's it like to be a small aircraft pilot. So ended up meeting up with a small aircraft pilot, and I went up with another videographer in this tiny little plane, which isn't quite my thing.
Your
but
thing. Yep.
It was really what an experience. I've never done it since or before. Or since. So that was really fun for me. And then there was Bog Hollow with the cranberries, doing like a cranberry story with the harvesting. And what's great is when you do these stories, they take you in deeper than the general public would get in. So like you're on a whale watch. I've done stories on the whale watch, and I'm way up high with they let me up high kind of thing to get the different angles and things like that. The different boats will let me into the captain's quarters,
where nobody else would generally get to go.
Yeah. So it's been what else ones did I write? Oh, I got to be in a bee suit once to do a bee story.
Oh, that's right.
And had the bees all around me. That was really cool. I got to go to the farm in Lakeville where the Clydesdales are, the Hollamar Clydesdales, and I got to do a story about them. So I'm like right up in there. These horses are huge. Just neat things that, that's what I love about my job is, you can be up in an airplane one day, in the office one day, and then off, with the Clydesdales. It's kind of cool. I did a story about the flash mob when I first started here, and I actually got trained on a cherry picker and was way high up above the entire crowd in a cherry picker.
And where was the flash mob?
Down at in Plymouth at the I think it was at the, gosh, I remember, it was the Thanksgiving parade, and they did a flash mob.
Oh, cool.
So I was up in the cherry picker shooting up there, and that, never been up in a cherry picker before. Go ahead.
And I know Brian did a whole series on recycling, and we got to go inside, like literally watch trash from take it out of your trash and throw it here, and where does it go, and you follow it. Fascinating, because, and they were 6, 8, 10-minute segments. You'd never get that on the local news.
No.
It was a really in-depth process that we got to see.
Oh, and I learned so much watching his piece about recycling. I've watched it a couple times, actually.
Yeah, it was
you
absolutely
don't realize
terrific.
Everything that goes into it. So.
No, you absolutely don't.
Yep.
Now, PCN actually ended up creating, or because of PCN, you decided that we needed some other longer programming, and you actually came up with a couple different iterations of PCN. So why don't you talk about those?
So in PCN, the stories tend to be around 2 to 4 minutes. We try to keep them tight. But occasionally you'd be like, oh, that story is just so much more. There's so much more to tell here. So we decided to start one called In Depth. So that lasted for a while. Now these are much harder to produce. They're longer pieces. We did one on addiction. We've done one on weather. Things like that. So we went
to getting into college and that whole process.
Getting into college.
Because it's such a long process, you can't tell that in 2 or 3 minutes. Yes.
And there's different parts to it too. It's not like a one-off story. There's different parts. So we just kept having this feeling like, it's too much for PCN to put this longer story on. And it just felt like it was busting out of its seams at times. So we said, let's start a second show. So we did one called In Depth for a while, and that was really great. It was, hard to keep up with staffing changes and things that happened. But then I think we took a break for a while, and then we decided on a show called Life.
PCN Life.
PCN Life, which is also a great story. We moved some of the longer segments, like Leslie Cutler, onto Life. That was great for a long time as well. It was like, well, a couple of years, I think we did Life. So we had musicians on. They would come in and perform, and then we'd interview them. So
it was more like a magazine style show.
Yeah, longer format magazine one. And so we were able to give stories in the arts and things, longer segments.
Exactly.
So that was a really powerful show too. And then just again with staffing changes, because Brian's moved on and Maureen have moved on, and we got some new people coming in. So it's just, and then I had stepped out to do something else here. So
you're back.
I'm back now.
You're coming back for 2019.
Yeah.
So let's talk about behind the stories that were actually your favorites.
My favorite ones.
In 6.5 years, you've got to have a couple that just hit you as being, these are my favorite stories.
I do, and they're favorite for different reasons. Sometimes it's the experience of shooting them. Sometimes it's just how it came out for whatever reason, or the visuals were really cool, the story itself. So I had written my Bog Hollow Cranberry Harvest one. Again, I talked about that as one of my good adventures too, as well as the airplane one, are a couple of my favorites, the way they came out in the end. Also the Nuns in Duxbury I did. I just, they let me into their private, like, mass, if you will, and they all just sing. And so I was like, I'm going to record this. So I recorded it, and the sound came out beautiful. So I used that as the bed of music through the whole thing. And it's so authentic because it's them. And it sounds so great. So that was one of mine. The Jose Mateo Nutcrackers, another one of my favorites that I did. I went, they had a bunch of kids in it, ballet dancers from Duxbury. And because Jose Mateo, they practice in Cambridge, so I went to Cambridge to do a story about the Nutcracker, but I focused it on these dancers. So it told the story of these 4 dancers, who they're young girls, and they're, I mean, really great ballet dancers to be at this level. So I told the story through their eyes of how long they've practiced and stuff. So again, the visuals in that were beautiful. And then I did a story of the flash mob. I did the making of a flash mob. I'm like, what does it take to put a flash mob together? It's a lot of people to coordinate, and you have to practice. So I did a story leading up to that flash mob that I was a cherry picker in. How did you put that together? So it's just some fun things. So I'll show a couple.
Yeah, and just before you do, I know a couple of my favorites were, Brian did a day in the life of our different towns and what you could do if you spent a whole day, and he did all 4 of our towns. Those were fascinating.
And he won a Telly Award for the day in the life of Duxbury.
And we have the most beautiful scenery in some of our towns in the world, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the Powder Point Bridge, Plymouth Harbor. We have beautiful, beautiful locations that we are fortunate.
And marshes and parks and all that kind of stuff.
And the other things that are kind of favorite stories of mine are the things that you really learn, like about infrastructure and about silly things like sewage lines, and you don't realize, in waterways, you don't realize how everything is connected. And to me, I got educated, but it's being educated in a very entertaining way, so you remember it. So what are we going to see now?
So I'm just going to show you some of my favorites that I've worked on over the years.
Okay, let's go.
The Sisters of St. Margaret were founded in East Grinstead, England in 1855 by the Reverend Dr. John Mason Neale. He was an Anglican priest, and his vision for the sisterhood was that they would be a nursing order. We came to Boston in 1873 at the request of Children's Hospital in Boston to run their School of Nursing, which we ran until 1917. The sisters acquired the property here in Duxbury in 1904. It was used primarily as a summer retreat center. The sisters ran a girls' camp here for many years, but it was just in the summer. They built this brand new residence here on the grounds of the convent in Duxbury, and the sisters moved in October of 2012. So the sisters are here year-round now.
There are 21 sisters in the Society of St. Margaret, ranging in age from the mid-30s to the mid-90s. And we are scattered about. There are sisters in Haiti, in New York City, in Dorchester, and of course here, which is the mother house. There are 10 of us here.
Being a postulant is one of 3 steps that you take until you are what we call a life professed sister, where you've made a life vow, just like you might have made to your husband, where you say forever. And so you first are a postulant, then you're a novice, then you're a sister who's professed for a period of time, usually 3 years, and then eventually again you make a life vow. I think it was a number of years before I came to community that I felt like God was calling me to do something more. I had a great job, I had a lot of friends, I had my own apartment, but it just felt like something was missing. When I finally met the sisters, it seemed like it all clicked. And I'll never forget, they came to pick me up at the airport for my first visit, and I was struck by, they were just real people. I mean, they were driving a cute little RAV4, and they were just real. And I think my first encounter with the community reassured me that being a sister didn't mean that you weren't a real person living in the real world, or that you had to be perfect, but it was that you were committed to the community, to God, to the service of God, and to the service of the church. So for me, it was that missing puzzle piece that community filled in. So our day actually begins pretty early. We have our first service at 6 o'clock. So usually around 4:45, 5 o'clock, the house is stirring and the first cups of coffee get made. And then at 6 o'clock, we gather in the chapel for morning prayer. And then we have about an hour between morning prayer and Mass, which is a very special time for us. And that's a time when the house is still quiet and we actually have some meditation time. And then after Mass, which is about 8 o'clock, we have breakfast and sort of get ready for the day. Then at 9 o'clock, we have a conference. So every day we gather at 9 to sort of check in and see what the plans are for the day. Then we have a period of work.
My work consists of sacristy work, doing dishes sometimes, menial household work. I do a great deal of spiritual guidance with individuals and with groups.
We gather again at 12 o'clock for the noon office, which is interesting because it forces us to break in the middle of the day. And it never fails. I'll be in the middle of something and think, oh, I just need 2 more minutes to finish it, and then it's time for noon office. But it's a reminder that we're not office workers, we're sisters. And our first requirement and obligation is to go up and pray. And so we gather together for, it's a brief service. And then we have our big meal of the day, our dinner, at about 12:30. And then again, another period of work or time for a walk. We have sisters who paint. Sister Carolyn and I might have some musical rehearsal in the afternoon. Other sisters, like Sister Grace, may be working on email for communications. Sisters may be writing sermons.
The sisters are involved in various ways in the community. We have a sister involved with the Duxbury Business Association each month. We have another sister who attends the Duxbury Interfaith Council meetings every month. We have a sister who teaches Sunday school at the local Episcopal Church. We have another sister who volunteers at the Standish Humane Society. We have sisters who worship at various churches within the local communities of Duxbury, Plymouth, Cohasset, and some of the other surrounding towns.
And we gather again at 5 o'clock for evening prayer, which normally we would sing the Psalms, which is really wonderful. We sing them back and forth to each other in the chapel, and it sort of sets the rhythm of the evening in motion. And then Compline at 7:30, which closes the day. And it's a wonderful, almost entirely chanted service, which is sort of hypnotic in the way that the chant flows. And it really, again, sort of starts to wind you down so that by 9 o'clock, when the great silence begins, you feel like you're ready for bed and ready for rest and ready to get up the next day at 4:45 to start all over again.
You need to have interest, desire for the life, and ability to live the life, and what opportunities it presents.
Here on the South Shore, the town of Duxbury certainly marches to the beat of its own drum. Depending on which way you enter, you might be greeted by a 9-foot-tall metal dragon, or come across a tiny neighborhood that has a name that sounds like it belongs in Santa's village. You'll see some famous names and some that are lesser known, yet they all had a major impact in shaping the town that we know as Duxbury. The town is sometimes referred to as the first suburb of Plymouth. It was settled in 1624 and incorporated not too long after in 1637. Nowadays, over 15,000 people call the town of Duxbury home. White-collar workers outnumber blue-collar workers 3-1, and unaffiliated voters make up 56% of the electorate. So if you're planning on running for office, you need to court that independent vote. But no matter which way you vote or what you do for work, we all need to start the day with breakfast. And we've got just the place for that in the center of town. Heading through Hall's Corner, you'll find the Foodsmith, being run by two unlikely restaurateurs. Both are former columnists for two of the state's most highly circulated newspapers. Laura Raposa, who dished gossip with the Boston Herald, and Steve Sire, who wrote a business column with the Globe. Since opening in August of 2015, this husband and wife team now find themselves dishing out breakfast sandwiches and running a business that's managed to stay hot through all 4 seasons.
We've been a full year. We've experienced our first Duxbury summer, which was incredible, and we're just so grateful that people found us and have supported us, you know, actually during the winter and summer. I mean, we were very happy, and we've got a bunch of core regulars that are here every day, and they were here during the snow and the rain and of the winter, and it's just been terrific.
If you want to stick around and eat, there are several window seats, or you can people watch from right here at the street level. But with so much to do and so many places to see in this town, it's no wonder why so many get their food to go. Unsure of where to go? A great place to start is right here at the Standish Monument. Even if you don't go up the tower, there are picnic tables here at the lower parking lot where you can eat that on-the-go breakfast and come up with some ideas. The monument itself stands at 116 feet tall, is capped off by a 14-foot-tall statue of Miles Standish, and serves as a lookout over the entire town. And if this looks like a complex structure, your eyes aren't fooling you. They began construction on this in 1872 and didn't finish building it until 1898, some 26 years later. The untrained eye won't notice the 3 different types of granite they used, but you will see the names of all 6 New England states over the archway. If you want to take a tour, though, you'll have to do it on the weekend during the summer months. Those who do go to the top may be inspired by what they see across the harbor, Duxbury Beach. It's here that you'll find 5 miles of some of the finest sand and surf on the South Shore. While the summer months easily bring in the biggest crowds, don't be too quick to discount the off-season months. There's enough beauty and serenity here to last from September to May. And one way to get to the beach is to drive over a Guinness Book World Record holder. At nearly a mile in length, the Powder Point Bridge is the longest wooden bridge this side east of the Mississippi. But right now, let's head to a spot that you may not have seen from high atop Standish Monument. It's on the side of the road in North Duxbury that you'll find the Lansing Bennett Forest, all 344 acres of it. Formerly known as the Trout Farm, this parcel of land was dedicated to the memory of Dr. Lansing Bennett, who served as chair of the town's Conservation Commission from 1967 to 1979, and he helped to secure over 1,200 acres of conservation land, as well as pass the Wetlands and Watershed Protection Bylaw. So what does all of that mean? Well, if you look at this map here, you'll see lots of square and rectangular shaped spots indicated by different shades of blue. Those spots represent all of the land in Duxbury that won't be developed, and it's a lot of land. And Trout Farm, now known as Lansing Bennett Forest, was one of his most satisfying land acquisitions. To get here, just take exit 11 off Route 3, then take a left onto Route 14 West. From there, you'll bear left at King Philip's Path, and then follow it straight to Union Bridge, where you'll turn right. We were hoping to see some bogs, though, so we headed over to North Hill Marsh on Mayflower Road. And if it looks like you're driving through the North Country in New Hampshire, you're probably in the right spot. These trails are great for hiking, biking, taking the dog, or just getting lost in nature. But to keep yourself from getting actually lost, keep your eyes open for the markings on the trees as you go. We were also told that if we kept the pond to our right this whole way, we'd eventually reach the cranberry bogs. Hopefully. And there does appear to be a light at the end of this pathway.
For a minute there, I was afraid I was having my own Blair Witch Project moment, but I did find my way to the old cranberry bogs, and I'm told that once you get to this point, you're about 3/4 of the way around the trail. Honestly, there are enough trails in this area to keep you busy for the entire day. Unfortunately, we don't have all day. We're heading to the other side of town now to find a spot where you can take your kayak out.
Kayak, rowboat, or swim. Just don't think about launching a motorized boat here. Ellison Beach, or Shipyard Lane Beach as it's known by locals, is the place to do all of those things. And if these kayaks lined up over here are any indication, then it would appear that folks in town are doing these activities with great frequency. And who can argue with the peace and serenity that this spot has to offer? For something a little more lighthearted though, head down the road to Bluefish Bridge. You can take your sea vessel out here as well, but when the tide is high, jumping off the bridge seems to be the order of the day. This guy here might be the coolest dad in the world. In fact, it might be difficult not to join in on the fun that these folks are having. I call this my diving ball. It's my cross between a dive and cannonball, and it always manages to keep me from hitting the bottom. You know, safety first. But if you're looking to do something a little drier, some arts and culture might be right up your alley. They're on full display Wednesday through Sunday at the Duxbury Art Complex Museum. Now in its 45th year, the museum has been serving the public with art exhibits, music, and on certain Sundays, one in June, July, and September, you can view a traditional Japanese tea ceremony. Along the walkway, you may even notice many of the Asian plantings and sculptures. The tea hut itself, named Wind in the Pines, was originally constructed in Japan in 1969 and reassembled here in Duxbury just in time for the first of these ceremonies in 1975. And the culture isn't just for the adults in the area.
We also do tea for the third grade of the Duxbury schools, and they do their performances in May. We have all 260 kids come down, and 2 groups one day and 2 groups the second day. And they remember, these kids remember they've been here. I've seen people years later and they say, oh, that's the place where the tea house was.
And if you're interested in touring some historic homes, the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society is always welcoming visitors. Check out the famous King Caesar House, which overlooks beautiful Duxbury Bay. It's here that they host the annual croquet tournament and Christmas party, among other events. Or you can go to the Historical Society's home office on Washington Street at the Nathaniel Windsor Jr. House, where they launch several of their walking tours from this gorgeous veranda out back. And if you're feeling a little adventurous, perhaps you can venture over to a part of town named for the workers that settled this area in 1757. A tinker was a person who traveled to different places and made a living fixing small items like pots and pans using hand tools. The original tinker to settle here on what is now known as Elm Street was a shoemaker named Jeremiah Dillingham. His settling here paved the way for other tinkers to follow suit, and they created their own section of town. The classic New England feel in this neighborhood is hard to ignore, from the old wooden fences to stone retainer walls to the barns behind many of the homes, which actually served as the workplaces for the tinkers when they inhabited this area. Years later, the barn on Steve Burrell's property was the original home of the Duxbury Clipper. The neighborhood may be small. In fact, someone we passed said, if you blink, you'll miss it. But for the folks that have lived here for decades, it's right where they want to be.
A lot of times, politicians, when they're running for office, they talk about family values and neighborhoods. It is kind of fascinating to actually live in one, where people really care about each other. If my dog got lost, there's a good chance, and he did sometimes, there's a good chance that somebody would find him and bring him back. I've never had a desire to move away from it, but just because of the sort of wonderful neighborly kinds of things that happen here, and people just really caring about each other and each other's families.
While many of this area's customs from 250 years ago have fallen by the wayside, there is one relatively new tradition that continues to this day, and it draws spectators from far and wide. It's known as the Night of Luminaries, and it happens every Christmas Eve. The residents of Tinkertown line the edges of their front lawns with candles in white bags, and it illuminates all of the streets in the neighborhood. It's really a sight to behold. Okay, right about now is probably time we start thinking about grabbing something to eat, but first, I gotta change this shirt. Okay, that's better. Let's go grab some dinner. The 1803 Windsor House Inn on Washington Street has a great combination of fine dining with a relaxed atmosphere, from the cozy bar at the entrance to the spacious seating outdoors on the patio as well as the backyard. On a busy night, the kitchen turns out anywhere from 180 to 200 plates, and most of it is locally sourced, like these oysters. And if you like fresh produce, look no further than the backyard garden. Here you'll find several types of tomatoes, peppers, root vegetables, and spinach, just to name a few.
I think people these days are looking for a more natural, healthy way of eating, and I think that the farm to fork or farm to table is the new trend that everybody wants to go at. So it's important for us to be able to give the opportunity to our guests that satisfaction, because it really speaks volumes when it comes to cooking all the food and you know, keeping up with everything that is going on.
And of course, the Windsor House is also an inn, meaning that if you enjoy too many spirits with your dining, you might be able to stay in one of the luxurious suites upstairs. Just not on this night, because all of the rooms were already booked. That gave us a chance to make one more stop on our way out of town. Farfar's Danish Ice Cream on St. George Street seems like one of those places you'd find in a brochure of places you'd have to go to if you're in the town of Duxbury. So I guess it was a good idea that we eventually stopped here. The business has been here since 1979, but aside from the owners, you won't find anyone working here that was even born then. In fact, these kids are so young, they weren't even born when the song 1979 by the Smashing Pumpkins came out, and that was 1995. But that's par for the course for the youth movement at Farfar's. It's almost like a rite of passage to work here if you're a kid from Duxbury. Whether it's making the ice cream or scooping it out to the customers that can't seem to get enough of its rich, creamy goodness. As evidenced by the banners on the ceiling of the colleges attended by past and present employees, it's safe to say that the kids are all right.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun working here in high school. You always see your teachers coming in after school, or some coaches or sports teams, and it's kind of cool getting to say hi to people that you know and getting to make ice cream for them. It's just kind of fun. I want someone to walk out the door thinking they tasted something unlike something they've ever tasted before. Just the best ice cream they've ever had.
Oh, banana ice cream. That is pretty awesome. See, I learned my lesson from the last time. If you're shooting a segment where you're eating ice cream, put it in a cup. That way it doesn't melt all over your hands. So our day in the life in the town of Duxbury has come to an end, and I still feel like there's stuff we need to see. So that just means we'll have to come back at another date. Reporting for PCN Life in Duxbury, I'm Brian Sullivan.
The Nutcracker is the story about a girl named Clara who gets the gift of the Nutcracker from her Uncle Drosselmeyer, and then he makes it come to life, and it becomes the Nutcracker Prince, and she dances with him, and he shows her gifts, and it breaks, but it's okay in the end. And she goes on a magical journey with him through all the different lands, and she gets to dance with him.
I love the Nutcracker because it's just a great experience. You get to learn all these different steps, new parts, and I love being an angel and a soldier. They're both great parts.
I'm a soldier, and I really love the Nutcracker because it's something professional, and it's really fun.
This is my 9th Nutcracker season here at Jose Mateo, and I've been working for a really long time to be on point in the Nutcracker, and it's such a great experience to be able to do that.
I'm really excited to be an angel this year because last year I was an understudy, so I only got to dance one time, but this time I get to do it all the regular times that everyone else does, so I'm excited for that.
reason that I love ballet is because there's never a time where you don't have to work on something. There's always something that you're trying to perfect, and it never gets boring.
I love ballet so much because it just really teaches you all of the stuff about the world. It teaches you how to be proper. It teaches you good posture, good manners, and I love it. It's just the fluidity of the movement, and it's just such a great sport.
It's not as upbeat, it's more graceful, and I like that better. And you have to put more time into it for it to improve, like the style of dance, so that's what I like better.
I have daily technique class every day, and I come up to Cambridge twice a week on Saturday and Sunday for rehearsals, which range from 3 to 4 hours every day.
I dance 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, 2-hour classes, 3-hour Nutcracker rehearsals. It's a lot.
There are people from all over the state in the production, so it's really cool to get to meet people from different areas.
All of the teachers here are so nice, and they make the rehearsals just so much fun.
It's really fun to be working with Jose Mateo. I've been doing the Nutcracker for around 4 years, and last year I just started dancing in Duxbury for him. He's really nice. I mean, he gives you very good tips, and I think he makes a lot of people better dancers overall. I felt like I wanted to do more ballet when I was around 10, I'd say, because I really got interested in ballet because I watched the Nutcracker a couple times and it looked really fun.
The technique of my both two roles, in Soldier, it's mainly just acting. You gotta play the part of a soldier, you gotta be strict. It's just on flat shoes, so it's not very high difficulty. But Angel, it's extremely hard. I'm dancing with mostly 15-year-old girls, and I'm only 13, so it's really hard to keep up.
It's such an amazing experience because you get to dance in front of so many people, and there's so many different shows, and it's really great to work with the company members and also the younger cast members.
I really like performing in Duxbury because it is in my hometown, and the stage is really nice in the PAC, and here when we perform it's not on a stage, and it's still lights and everything with that, but it's not as nice as being on a real stage, so I like that the best, and there's a bigger audience, so that's really fun.
It's gonna feel great. All my friends are coming to the show, and they're gonna make posters, and they're gonna be in the audience, so I'm kind of excited about that.
That was wonderful. Great compilation. Thank you for putting that together.
You're welcome.
And we've come to the end of our show, so I want to see if you remember how to close out the show.
I do, Julie.
Okay.
I believe I do. Thank you for watching PACTV Community News. We're on Facebook and Twitter, and we have a couple fill-in shows coming up for the holidays, but we are back with brand new programming January 17th. We'll see you then.
Have a great new year.